Welcome to Business on 570 News, powered by Save on Energy. And let's get right to it, gentlemen. There's a lot to talk about. The election coming up in less than a week. We've got the Manulife Financial LPGA Classic ongoing. Grey Silo, final round today. But let's start with your first thoughts of the afternoon.
Well, election coming up on Thursday. And so we've got the back half of the show. We're going to have some clips from Tim Hudak when he did join us. Unfortunately, scheduling was a problem, seemed to be for Ms. Horvath.
I think it was you, actually. They didn't like you. They both really liked me.
That's what I heard from them. But we're going to talk a little bit about the platforms from the three parties, and also that we've had election forums for each of our three ridings. I know you've done interviews in Cambridge with the candidates there. So we're going to do a little bit about what the leaders have been talking about, where things stand as far as that's concerned, and then our local folks, because this is going to be an important election, and obviously there's lots to talk about.
Well, there's tons to talk about, and something very important that's happening in the region of Waterloo,
Absolutely.
of course, is the Manulife Classic, the LPGA event that's at Grey Silo, and this is the third year that it's there. And I've been out and saw the course and watched a little bit of golf and enjoyed the entertainment from Manulife, as well as the gentleman we're going to speak to right now, who is the Chief Operating Officer of Gulf North Properties, Mike Garside. Mike, how's things going out there at Grey Silo?
Hey guys, how are you today?
Good.
Things are great. The week's been great so far, and I think the girls are having a great time back in the region again.
No. Part of what you've got Gulf North. You have a lot of different properties, and we'll come back and talk about the LPGA and what's going to happen this afternoon with the with the final round. But how many golf courses do you have, and have you had a lot of the problems that many golf courses in southwestern Ontario have had with Winterkill? I know the golf course I play at has had 4 or 5 temporary greens. Some of the golf courses down in the Niagara area have got their entire golf courses are out of play because they've had such a tough winter. How have things? I know Grey Silo's in pretty good shape, but how are the rest of your golf courses?
Yeah, we have 24 courses in Ontario. They go north of Toronto. We go up into Cottage Country in the Peterborough area, and also we've just acquired Northern Dunes. But we also acquired Rebel Creek this year, which is a big acquisition.
Oh wow, yeah,
great. So we took over the lease of that operation there. So, but in terms of the winter, the winter was extremely difficult for a lot of golf courses. We had a lot of ice, a lot of snow. The combination of those two things don't really add up to great conditions in the springtime.
The other day, Mike, you and I were sitting down with a couple of individuals who were coaches, and they were from Florida probably, and you had made a comment, something about 5 or 6 weeks ago there was a foot of snow out there, and a couple of weeks ago the course was completely flooded. Talk about, maybe let us know what kind of, especially when you got a big event coming, but even, your member golfers are going to want to come out there and play in decent conditions. What kind of pressure has been under, your belt for the last few weeks to get things in shape?
Well, I think it's a superintendent's nightmare to wake up in the spring and, see the amount of water and the amount of, just ice that was everywhere. We actually came through the winter pretty good. We only had about company-wide. We only had about 10 temporary greens company-wide.
Wow, that's great.
Which is phenomenal, and kudos to our turf crew for looking after the golf courses like they do. But we came through the winter extremely well compared to a lot of golf courses. With the exception of one golf course, we had underwater until about 3 weeks ago.
Which one would that be?
Brant Valley down in St. George.
Yeah.
It was underwater about 3 weeks ago, but it's up and running, and it's in great shape right now too. So, again, hats off to our turf crews for that.
Now, in the golf world, spring hasn't been particularly friendly to you, but where you make your money is at the front end of the season and the back end, because usually in the middle of the summer you get your rounds in, but you need a good spring and or a good fall to really make your season. So is that a fair assessment of what it takes to be successful in the golf business?
It is. Obviously, the length of season is important.
Mm-hmm.
A good spring is very important as people are, really knocking down the doors to get out and enjoy the warmer weather after, especially after this winter, after being a long winter. But fall's a little bit different. We extend our season as long as we can. It's more member play in the fall.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, we get a lot of competition with other sports starting up in the fall, and and parents obviously, toting their kids off to, hockey rinks and other venues. So it becomes a little bit more difficult to keep everyone interested in the fall. But
so when people get busier like that, obviously that's the pay-as-you-play golfer doesn't have the time or ability to be able to get out and play. That's why you're saying it's mostly members in the fall.
Correct. Yeah, and that again, I always say that our competition isn't the golf course down the street. Our competition is people's time, as it is with any leisure activity right now.
Mm-hmm.
But we try our best with different programs to fit different needs and get people out as often as we can.
Now, as for the event that's going on this week, that of course is consuming probably a lot of your time. Speaking of time, I was out there on the Thursday, the first day. And I had talked to some people leading up to it. There was a little bit of concern of the pre-ticket sales that were going on, but I want to tell you, I thought the place was packed on Thursday for the first day.
Yeah, Thursday crowds are kind of hit and miss over the previous years. First year, I think Thursday was phenomenal, and they weren't expecting that many people coming through the doors. But the crowds build as the week goes on, and the Friday crowds are good, and then heading into the weekend, it's always it depends on who's on the leaderboard too. So I think right now it's anybody's race, and could be a great finish.
Well, maybe if we have a third consecutive playoff, it'll help this afternoon. So
well, there's a few hours left. Of course, this is when this show's over, it's 1 o'clock on Sunday afternoon. But you can still get out there and see the winner crowned.
Absolutely. Now, talk about the special things. I mean, in getting ready for tournament play. I mean, your golf course is always in great shape for me when I play it. But what are the special things that you have to do to get it ready for championship play for a LPGA professional tour? Like, what are the extra things that are required of you as a golf course owner in hosting an event like this?
Well, there's really two things. There's the playability for the players, and there's also the aesthetic of the golf course for the cameras. Those two things don't necessarily always go hand in hand. When you're hosting a tour event, they always want the golf course hard and fast, which is totally contrary to what we would normally do for everyday play. So doing that takes a lot of turf management from Jeff Haynes, our superintendent here, to make sure that the golf course peaks at the right time and make sure it's properly playable. But on the flip side, obviously we need to make sure that the golf course is nice and green for the cameras on Sunday.
Our guest is Mike Garside, COO of Gulf North Properties.
Well, we have been fortunate to have for 3 years the event here. And how would you describe the improvements to the golf course you've had to make? So, you've the third year, and I know you've always made improvements to the golf course to satisfy what you just talked about, the requirements of the tour and the playability for the ladies, as well as that aesthetic for the camera. So what are some of the improvements you have made of the golf course to make it even more successful for the Manulife Classic?
I think we had to do more improvements in the first year than we have in the second and obviously this year. We needed to, again, it needs to be eye-pleasing for the, especially even for the spectators that are coming around for the event. And that's first and foremost. It really adds to the environment and adds to the expectations of the viewing audience themselves. Over the last couple of years, we really haven't had to do a whole lot. We have the agronomists, the LPGA agronomists, come up each year and guide Jeff through his practices and make sure that things are being done, to their expectations. And like I say, outside of year one and leading up to year one, we really haven't had to do a whole lot.
Mike, you and I had the opportunity on the Wednesday Pro-Am to play with Christy Kerr. So what happened to your game? That's what I want to know.
The problem is I've been playing too much golf with you, and you're rubbing off on me.
Well, this is we appreciate you coming on. Gray Silo is a great venue, and for as we have said last year, the LPGA is a world tour. We're going to see the world has seen over the first 3 days of what Waterloo region has to offer, and Gray Silo is a great ambassador for the region. So congratulations.
And thanks for that, because I know it's an awful lot of pressure on Gulf North Properties. You're responsible for running this. This is a business you're running, and this is a little bit of a hiccup in the whole business game when you've got something like this coming along. So thanks very much, Mike, for what you and Gulf North put forward for the Waterloo region.
Yeah, no problem, guys. It's it's a pleasure to serve the community, and we try our best to bring everything local. So hopefully that's who we are, and that's what we're all about. So hopefully things keep running smoothly.
All right. Thanks, Mike. Mike Garside was our guest, COO of Gulf North Properties. We're coming back with more on Business to Business on 570 News. Welcome back to Business on 570 News. This segment of Business to Business brought to you by Cowan Insurance. And, gentlemen, the election coming up on Thursday, and exciting times for political observers.
Yeah, well, and we as we said earlier in the show, we invited all three of the leaders. In fact, when we had them in for our pre-election speeches that they all gave in February and March, they all agreed to come on. And elections are busy times. I know Tim Hudak was in, and we've got some of what he had to say when he joined us a number of weeks ago. The other two, they're traveling all over the province, and I can't believe that they turned down an opportunity to appear on
Business to Business
on
with
570
Greg
News.
and Ian. I can't believe
now
that.
they are both all three of them have been on this show.
No,
absolutely.
However, and all three were on prior to the election being called.
Yep.
And then the offer was extended. Right after the election was called, the offer was extended to all three.
Yeah, and all three of them indicated they would try and make time.
Yeah.
And we just have not been able to. We've been pretty flexible, and unfortunately, Miss Wynne and Miss Horvath have not been able to come in. So what we're going to do today is we'll give you a representation of what Mr. Hudak said, and then talk about the issues that we've had. Yep. And then we'll come back after, and we'll try and do our best to talk about all of the parties, Miss Horvath and Miss Wynne's as well. So why don't we let them hear some of what Mr. Hudak
Here's
had
a
to say.
sample of what Tory leader Tim Hudak said when he spoke to us on May the 18th.
If you're interested in more jobs, better jobs, full-time career jobs, not just part-time jobs, you're going to like what you see. Number one, it all starts, the Million Jobs Plan, with balancing the budget. What I heard from you folks at the chambers, your members, is the single most important thing to give you confidence to add men and women to your payroll is a province that spends within its means, that balances its budget. Because we all know that deeply indebted provinces or states, they're going to have to raise taxes, they won't invest in their transportation systems, and jobs will leave. That's number one. Number two, lowered taxes on job creators, the most attractive in North America. It's a pretty basic lesson we all learn in life and in economics. If you increase taxes on something, you get less of it. You lower taxes, you get more. So I'm going to lower taxes on jobs. That'll bring 120,000 jobs into our province. Third thing, affordable energy. Our plan will help attract more business, particularly industry, by taking $20 billion in costs out of our system, 40,000 jobs from affordable energy. And a big one here in Kitchener-Waterloo, Cambridge. I was at Conestoga just last week with Michael Harris. And I want to see a greater partnership with our job connections at the colleges in skilled trades. Electricians, carpenters, precision machine operators. We know these are all good jobs that are always going to be in demand. Our plan there, by allowing every journeyman to train and mentor a single apprentice, 200,000 jobs from that alone. And if you get deep in debt, you get in trouble. You do that in your own home. If you keep adding $20,000 a year to your mortgage, I use that number because the province is adding $20 billion a year to our debt. Pretty soon you're going to lose the house. If you lose the house, odds are you might lose a family. Awfully hard to climb back. We saw what happens in Europe when countries got deep in debt like Greece or just down the 401 into Detroit, Michigan. I don't want to see that for Ontario. Mm-hmm. So that does mean we have to make some difficult but long overdue decisions to figure out what government should do and do that better and to get out of areas that we shouldn't be in. Michael Harris has brought forward, for example, the notion of Drive Clean. I mean, should Drive Clean, which the Auditor General says no longer is really necessary in our province, should it be just a tax on give you a happy birthday present every 2 years, just keep bureaucrats employed? Or is it better, if you're interested in more jobs, better jobs, full-time career jobs, not just part-time jobs, you're going to like what you see. I'll give you some quick highlights and happy to take the questions that you may have. Number one, it all starts, the Million Jobs Plan, with balancing the budget. What I heard from you folks at the chambers, your members, is the single most important thing to give you confidence to add men and women to your payroll is a province that spends within its means, that balances its budget. Because we all know that deeply indebted provinces or states, they're going to have to raise taxes, they won't invest in their transportation systems, and jobs will leave. That's number one. Number two, lowered taxes on job creators, the most attractive in North America. It's a pretty basic lesson we all learn in life and in economics. If you increase taxes on something, you get less of it. You lower taxes, you get more. So I'm going to lower taxes on jobs. That'll bring 120,000 jobs into our province. Third thing, affordable energy. Our plan will help attract more business, particularly industry, by taking $20 billion in costs out of our system, 40,000 jobs from affordable energy. And a big one here in Kitchener-Waterloo, Cambridge. I was at Conestoga just last week with Michael Harris. And I want to see a greater partnership with our job connections at the colleges in skilled trades. Electricians, carpenters, precision machine operators. We know these are all good jobs that are always going to be in demand. Our plan there, by allowing every journeyman to train and mentor a single apprentice, 200,000 jobs from that alone. Just the other day I was at a manufacturer in Niagara called Standpack. They make food packaging for safe food. And so as a result, people are conscious of that. Big demand in North America. So they're going to add on 10 new machines for packaging, 4 men and women at each machine, 40 jobs. But when I was there, they said, Tim, you know what, though? I got a plant in Niagara in Ontario. I've got a plant in Texas. But when I look at my bills, my hydro rates are 60% lower in Texas. So where are we going to put those jobs? And if the machines go down to Texas because they depend on affordable hydro, so go the jobs. And I worry so goes the plant eventually, too. That's why our plan is focused on affordable energy again that will save the average homeowner about $384. It'll take $20 billion of costs out of the system. We believe, an independent economist told us, about 40,000 new jobs, a lot in industry. How do you do that? You stop the expensive subsidies for wind and solar. That's driving the price up. Mm-hmm. Look, if Quebec or Newfoundland want to sell us hydroelectricity for half the cost we're paying right now for wind, shouldn't we take that contract? And the third, we got a massive, expensive bureaucracy in hydro. At Ontario Power Generation and Hydro One alone, 11,000 bureaucrats making over $100,000 a year. Mm-hmm. They're producing less power, by the way, Ian. Dramatically downsize that bureaucracy and pass on the savings to the ratepayer.
So there's a sampling of what Mr. Hudak told us when he appeared on the show on the 18th of May.
One of the things that struck me about this campaign is I think to a large extent it's been driven by the plan, the Million Jobs Plan, that the Tories have put forward, and what we've heard from him is a lot about the fiscal situation the province is in and how to get out of that and how to get out of the deficit, and the shared pain is what I think he's really saying is everyone's going to have to do their bit. And
I think he made some really good points on the debate too about because he was hammered pretty good about his Million Jobs Plan. There was some some remarks about that and especially his cuts. The other leaders were talking about, well, he's there's going to be a lot of hurt and pain and suffering. And I think he made one comment that was kind of interesting. He talked about the fact that there's between 6 and 8% of the provincial employees who retire or exit voluntarily for other jobs a year. And he said over the period of time that he's going to be doing his cut program, there's going to be 350,000 people or more that are going to voluntarily leave through attrition. And largely, what he's really cutting out is attrition. And I think, then he makes the comment, I think, to Premier Wynne at the time and says, Premier Wynne, do you think that government is 92% efficient? We can't lose 8 or 10%. And I think, that's a real important part about his jobs cut program when he talks about that. In fact, everybody complains about government waste and spending, and is there that much room? What do you think? Do you think there's that much room in government?
Well, I mean, I think we're of the view that regardless of whether you think it's 6 or 8 or 4%, the fact of the matter is we can't afford what we're paying for right now, and that's the bottom line. And so from that respect, I think he actually can make the case about that. I think where he ran into a lot more troubles is when you promise that you're going to create 1 million jobs and your numbers are. I'm not quite sure that they're very pleased that how they did their calculations. But I think the other part that while he was getting hammered, and I'm not sure he necessarily owned up to that as much as he might have. But I think the theme that what he's going for is saying, I'm going to be talking about jobs. I'm going to get the province's fiscal house in order, and I'm going to create jobs. Those are the two things I'm going to do if I'm premier. And I think from that perspective in the leaders' debate, I think he clarified those things for if you're just starting to pay attention. I'm not sure you're going to get caught up on the detail of the plan of saying those are the things he stands for.
Given the number of economists who've weighed in on the jobs plan, many of them naysayers, I'm surprised he didn't come under more fire from Wynne and Horwath. I thought they could have attacked him much more vociferously and didn't.
Well, you know what? I can tell you, and it kind of stems back, and I know a lot of people have brought up the Harris years as well. But Mike Harris, of which let's be honest about it, Tim Hudak is a product of that government back then. But his philosophy was reducing taxes is going to actually increase provincial revenues, and lo and behold, Mike Harris, when he was in, he lowered provincial income tax, and it actually provincial revenues went up. And because when you give, his philosophy was you give the money back to the people are going to spend it anyway, and when they spend it, they pay provincial sales tax. So I think the reality of it is some economists are looking at it purely from a numbers perspective and say, 1 + 1 = 2, and that jobs plan sounds ridiculous. But I think it's more than that. I think it's a philosophical approach on if we change the way government does business, and if we hit all of these hot button issues that are of concern to business will then regain confidence in the government, regain confidence in being a part of the Ontario business community, and start reinvesting and building their companies.
I think that in broad measure, I think that's probably fair. I mean, if you boil it down to what Hudak's saying, and we're going to come back after the break and talk about Ms. Horwath's plan and Ms. Wynne's plan, but I think it's probably fair to say that if I had to characterize it as saying that the conservative philosophy is that big government doesn't work and that the present Ontario government needs to be smaller than it is to get its house in order and to unshackle business to make the investments because they are sitting on cash. I think that's generally what he's saying is that get out of the way and let business do it. And I think we'll come back and talk about what we think the NDP platform says about their philosophy and the Liberal budget or platform and what it says about the Liberal philosophy about how to do things.
All right, we're going to come back with more as Business to Business continues, powered by Save on Energy on 570 News. Welcome back to Business on 570 News, powered by Save on Energy. And this segment of Business to Business is brought to you by Gallagher's Travel. So we discussed and heard from Mr. Hudak. Moving on, NDP leader Andrea Horwath, who, again, before the election call, along with Ms. Wynne and Mr. Hudak, were guests on this show. Your thoughts on her campaign thus far and her platform, as you understand it? You know what?
It really perplexed me, and I think Ian will probably, both of you probably, because we all three of us met her. Very pleasant
and
woman,
impressive.
Very impressive. You know what? I'll tell you this, Glenn. She's the first NDP leader that's accepted an invitation from a Chamber of Commerce to come and speak for a long, long time. And she boldly stood up in front of the business crowd from the Greater KW and the Cambridge Chamber of Commerce, talked about her plan with absolute confidence. And, I thought that she'd get a lot more traction, maybe not necessarily, certainly didn't maybe expect it from the business community, but I certainly thought that she would get a lot more traction. She was strong on the debate. I thought, especially right out of the gate, she got her opportunity to get her massive digs in. I think, which really affected the premier. But I don't know why her plan hasn't resonated. I don't know why, especially when she's saying, "I'm going to take minimum wage rate to $14."
Yeah.
Like you would think that would resonate with people, and that's what we want. That's what we want, but it hasn't.
Well, I think one of the things, and we talked about the philosophy, and we talked about where we think the Tories are. I think what has been interesting to me is, I mean, locally they've got strong NDP candidates in the ridings here. I think that they've really moved, and I think what the NDP have tried to do is to not be seen to be marginalized as a far left party that really is just the conscience of the legislature, and so they've intentionally been coming to the middle. That's been awkward because
taking some heat for it.
Well, taking some heat from inside, but Hudak has made the agenda about his plan. The Liberals are the government, and so I think they've been getting a lot of the steam. So you're moving into what has been seen to be liberal territory. But I would argue that the Liberal budget is really, I wouldn't even say it's gone beyond what an NDP government. It's in my mind, and
further left.
Well,
than
it's
NDP.
irresponsible.
Yeah.
It's absolutely, in my mind, it's irresponsible. It does not for 1 second address the deficit, and we'll talk about that when we come back. But I think the NDP plan was trying to be yes, left of center. It's
I'll go one step further than that. I think that the core of the NDP platform is let's attack Ms. Wynne over the gas plants. Let's use the word scandal at every opportunity.
Wow.
People say, well, that was the most progressive budget that we've ever seen in the province of Ontario. As far as I'm concerned, it was the most irresponsible budget that's ever seen.
Most regressive.
It was we can have it all. We don't have to pay for it, and there's no consequence. Because that's what it looks like. It looks like we'll just put everything out there and say we're going to move. We're going to try and get those NDP voters to say, well, you know what? The thing that you talked about is what I like about the NDP is they and whether you like it or not, it is fully costed out. And you even brought the form in last time we were talking about this and said in year one, here's what they're going to do, and here's what it's going to cost. Year two, whether you agree with it or not. To me, it looks like it's an actual plan, and it does address much more than the Liberal plan of saying how do we be fiscally responsible. Which to me I think that's what I'm trying to get at is you almost see the Liberals kind of switching over to saying we don't need to really tell anyone how we're going to pay for it. And to your point is. They still say the Liberals say they're going to balance the budget, but don't tell you how they're going to do it. At least the NDP are saying, here's what we are going to invest, and here's how we're going to balance the budget. Because that's actually in the plan. Have I got that right?
You've hit the nail right on the head. There's no question about it. I think, in all fairness, Andrea and the rest of her caucus were extremely upset that they were promised some things out of that Liberal government that they didn't get.
Well,
one of them, the big one, being the 15% reduction in auto insurance rates that never ever. Quite frankly, the NDP aren't going to be able to do that either. Otherwise, they're going to be bankrupting some auto insurance carriers that are out there right now. But unless they change the coverage level, if they drop the coverages down, that's different. But I think that they have some clear things that would appeal to people. That would appeal to people. We're gonna lop 15% out. We're gonna give you $14 an hour for minimum wage. We're gonna increase. They're actually talking about rolling back some of the corporate tax cuts in order to fund some of these programs. However, small businesses are going to get a tax cut. So I think her plan is a little bit confusing, but you're exactly right. It's saying she's shown a defined path on how she's going to pay for everything, and that's much clearer than even Hudak's plan.
Well, and I think the NDP, and you're right, the rhetoric in the debate was talking about the gas plants and say the scandals, and you know what, there's lots to talk about there. Yes, we've talked about it for a long time, but there's a big amount of money that got wasted, so they want to talk about that. But what I keep hearing is saying, no, we couldn't support that budget. A, they think it's irresponsible, fiscally irresponsible, and B, the argument is, well, they couldn't even deliver on the three things that we wanted, and
which seemingly were kind of minor.
They seem minor, but they didn't accomplish those three things from last year's budget. So I think it's a fair point to say, they didn't.
My point was, other than attacking Wynne over the gas plant scandal, what is the crux? Give me the essential element of the NDP platform?
Well, to me, if boil it down like we did for Hudak, I'd say the NDP want to be a moderate left of center that say there is a reason for government programs or government intervention in certain circumstances, but it's becoming more populist, and so it's a more populist left of center approach. But I think what they're trying to do is to say
All right.
that they are not. They understand that there has to be fiscal accountability inside of that, and I think that's where they're trying to
Okay.
get into that space.
Now, gentlemen, finally, as we wrap up this segment, Ms. Wynne, again, she's appeared on the show, and your thoughts on on that campaign?
Well, she admitted on the debate that they don't have a plan. Their plan is the budget. So you want to know what the Liberals are up to? The Liberals are up to exactly what they presented back on May the 1st, which was Budget Day. However, I want to tell you, in the debate, I thought she got crushed. And she got crushed right out of the gate with Andrea Horwath absolutely on the attack. And I think that flustered her. You could almost see it in her face where it set her right back on her heels. And I think, you and I had talked about it off air beforehand. At least 45 minutes, it put her in the back seat. Maybe even for the rest of the debate.
It doesn't matter what political party you are. You've been there 11 years, and you've got scandals like Orange and e-health and gas plants. It's hard to defend your record because those are what people want to talk about. And I do think that the plan, as you're right, is the budget. And the grave difficulty that I think a lot of business people have is, you say we need to make investments, and so to boil it down, I think the Liberals are saying big government programs with virtually no cap is what needs to happen to get the province of Ontario back on the right track. Because that's what their budget talks about: big investments in all kinds of things, some of which need to happen, but there seems to be very little regard for the downstream fiscal health. And to me, that's a problem, because that's what I hear people saying is, well, wait a minute, how can we spend that kind of money, $12.5 billion? I think, people understand that that's not sustainable. And I think that's what business people are asking is, how are you going to get the deficit? And when she was asked the question, I know in our local debates, there was lots of back and forth between all the parties and our local candidates, which has been, that's another topic of making sure that each of the local candidates in all four of our ridings have been asked the questions that are important to business. And we've got those things taped as you do.
Yeah.
But when she was asked, how are you going to balance the budget, both in scrums and during the debate, she couldn't. She just said, "Well, we'll have to cut." Well, anyone, and you talk about economists savaging the Tory plan, but they all said, "Well, wait a minute, you can't balance the budget without having massive cuts in that fourth year in whatever it is, 2017-18, which is just you can't turn the tap off that much." So there doesn't seem to be a plan for getting. There's a plan to spend for the Liberals, but there's no plan to get back to balance.
Yep.
And I think that's what differentiates them from both the NDP and the Tories is there's at least a plan that you can debate, but they actually have said, here's some of the things we're going to do. And I don't think that's being unfair. There is no specific cuts or agenda for how to cut it. And what you're left to look at is to say that really what they're saying is they're going to hope that the growth in the economy means there's more revenues to balance the budget.
Yeah.
And I think there's no one that I've talked to that believes that alone can sort out the deficit.
Mm-hmm.
All right. We're going to come back with more as Business to Business continues right here on 570 News. Welcome back to Business on 570 News, powered by Save on Energy. Gentlemen?
Well, you know what? The thing that's kind of irritating me a little bit about this whole process, and there's and I know the game, and I know how it's got to be played, but there's a little bit of untruths, and the biggest untruth is this: I think that in order for any of the parties, it doesn't matter which one, I don't care if it's a Libertarian Party or who gets in, whatever party, and Ian, you tell me if you don't agree with me, whatever party gets in, if they want to balance the books by 2017, 2018, they're going to have to cut.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the bottom line is, I encourage everyone to look at the plans. From our perspective, in the business community, is it's unsustainable to have the level of deficit and debt.
There is absolutely no way that Premier Wynne can balance the budget by 2017, 2018 with the budget she just presented.
And I guess this is the thing. We've all done. We've had the all the local candidates from the parties out there, so it's great because whoever wins, we're going to work with them.
Oh, for sure.
And we're nonpartisan. The bottom line it's two things. One is really. I think the province of Ontario needs a majority government because there is really difficult decisions that need to be made from a fiscal perspective and an investment perspective. And you have to make some choices and be able to get things through the legislature. So that's number one. So frankly, I don't really care who, but somebody needs to get in there. And yes, there's no party can legitimately say they're not going to have to cut government spending in order to balance the budget. And so from that perspective, I think people should be looking at the promises that are being made with that lens of saying everybody's going to have to make some tough choices, and whether that's cutting jobs or capping wages or cutting programs, any which way you slice it's going to have to happen. We can't have $13.5 billion deficits going forward without it harming continuing to harm the economy.
All three parties are going to have to put in billions of dollars into infrastructure and transportation. We know that, and they're all going to do that because they have to address the concerns of moving people and goods and services. Absolutely no question about it. So, those things said and out of the way, that government is going to be there addressing some of those key issues. The one issue that none of them are save and except for one, two, with the Libertarian Party there, who's just saying, cut. But the fact of the matter is, and I think this is what's really important to people, that they need to understand, is we spend $12.5 billion more than we bring in right now. In order to reverse that, there's only two ways to do it. Either jack up the revenue somewhere, go out and tax the heck out of people to get the revenue, or make some serious cuts into the operation of the provincial government. That's the only way to do it.
Or some combination, but the cuts part needs to be part of it. And I mean that. So anyone that says they're not going to have to make some cuts is not correct. And even so ask your local candidate. Look at the websites for all of the parties. But the one thing that I would just say is we've talked a lot about this. I sure hope there's more than 48% of people that get out and vote in this provincial election, because it is important. It affects the services that people expect, whether it's healthcare, education, transportation, all of those social services. All of those things are affected by who gets elected. And boy, oh boy, 48% is not.
I had a young group say to me. I asked them if they were going to vote, and they said, "Oh, can you do it online?" And I said, "No." They said, "Probably not."
We got it. That needs to be addressed. That's a discussion for another time, but it's a good one.
All right, next time we meet, it'll be post-election, and I can't wait to get your thoughts then. Thanks for.
We'll be happy about it, Glenn, because Ian and I do build relationships regardless of who they are. We've got friends on all sides of the fence, and they're all great people, and we'll work with them.
Pleased to be joined by Jeff Quint of Waterloo North Hydro to talk more about Save on Energy.
Well, thanks for joining us, Jeff. And as the warm weather starts to come upon us, we've been waiting a long time for it. I thought today we would talk a little bit about air conditioning and keeping your home or your business comfortable during the hot summer months. So what are the programs that Save on Energy has to help people manage their energy conservation while staying comfortable?
Well, we have programs both for our residential customers and our business customers. On the business side, we've got some very nice incentives that do help customers stay cool and save energy. And the main one's through our retrofit program, and it's got avenues for saving energy for those replacements. And they're very lucrative. You can save substantial money by replacing those rooftop units. And there's things you can do without having to replace them too, by properly maintaining them and cleaning them and keeping them clear. That itself will help people save energy and save money these days just without replacing them, because we don't always want to focus on replacing them. We want to make sure that people are doing the proper things to keep them up and running and at their most efficient level as possible.
So when you talk about replacing units, maybe one of the questions for someone that's got an industrial or a business unit, when do they have to be replaced? Like, when should be, or is it really just how well they're working? Like, and how would you know when the time is to replace your unit?
I don't think there's an ideal time to replace it, but what we see is there's a lot of old equipment out in the marketplace. So when I say old, we're talking 20, 30, 40 years old out there, and that's very, very inefficient equipment that's really costing people a lot of money. Now, it could still be working very well, which means it's not causing them any problems, but it's really hurting their pocketbook at the end of the day. So you want to look at that equipment that's 15, 20, 25 years old, because there's been significant efficiency gains up on these pieces of equipment, and like I said, there's incentives to help them move forward. But I mean, if you've got something that's 4, 5, maybe even 10 years old, as long as it's just working well, it probably doesn't make business sense to replace that equipment.
So if you've got replacing a unit, that could be what are the scale of the incentives you have? So would a unit cost maybe $10,000, and how much of it, like on a unit like that, how much of an incentive or a rebate do you get for that replacement?
Well, as with all of our incentives, it's all tiered based on the efficiency of the units going in out there. But to give people an idea, you could see a 10 to 20% incentive on most units going on the roof just based on the buying something more efficient, but it can increase with a little more work, and that's really what we encourage people to do is make sure they're looking long term, because the units they're replacing are 20 and 30 years old. So you're putting this in for the next 20 or 30 years. You want to make sure you put in something that the most efficient you can afford, not the most efficient out there, because that doesn't make good business sense either. But like I said, you could see anywhere between maybe 10 and 30% return in an event on the incentive side alone.
So that's just on the install. So you'd get 30%, up to 30% back on the install. What are the types of savings you'll find in your energy consumption and by extension your reduction in your costs? Like how much can that improve for your bottom line?
It could be up to 30% in times.
Wow!
By moving to this level. So it all depends on the age, the condition, and the efficiency of the old unit, and then what you're putting in. So it's all conditional to that, but the opportunities are definitely there. And with that cooling season, you definitely want to take advantage of the incentives that are out there, as we move into that area.
So as usual, get in touch with your Save on Energy local utilities rep and have someone come. Someone will come out, look at your system and tell you what the options are for any business to take advantage of.
Exactly. Visit saveonenergy.ca or talk to any of your local distribution companies, and they'll be happy to help you make some good selections on equipment.